Now, today, the 13th of June, is a historic occasion to showcase Nigeria's democracy as the 10th National Assembly in Nigeria will be inaugurated. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu will make the proclamation based on the powers vested in him by the Nigerian Constitution, Chapter 5, Part 1, Section 64 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, on dissolution and issue of proclamations by the President in subsection 3, which states that subject to the provisions of this constitution, the person elected as the president shall have powers to issue a proclamation for the holding of the first session of the National Assembly after he has been sworn in, or for dissolution as provided in this section.
The first major assignment for the lawmakers after their inauguration would be to make the choice of whom their leaders and principal officers would be. As at now, 55 members elect of the House of Representatives from the South-South geopolitical zone have endorsed Rep. Tajuddin Abbas to emerge as Speaker of the 10th Assembly. We're now joined by Michael Magaji, senatorial aspirant to SDP Taraba State, to give us more updates on this inauguration. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Before we go into the conversation, we must mention that we have received information that 2 APC members died on their way to the inauguration, and our thoughts and our prayers with the families and the members of the House at this time. It's not really the most exciting way to start off the news. Well, let's get into the conversation for today. Before we look at the 10th Assembly, let's talk about just a very brief analysis of the 9th Assembly, which was oftentimes, we did see that it was referred to as a rubber stamp assembly. What would you say are some of the mistakes that we've seen from the 9th Assembly that we're hoping not to see reignited or done? We're hoping not to see these mistakes made again in the 10th Assembly.
Well, the National Assembly has been created, and they have 3 major functional roles. One is to advise the president on appointments. The second is to make laws for the country or repeal laws, as the case may be. And the third is to provide oversight. And given the quality of governance we saw in the last administration, clearly there's a lot of areas for improvement. The last assembly was seen as a rubber stamp. This is the perception by a good number of people. And while we are encouraged that there should be collaboration between the National Assembly and the executive branch, there must also be retention of that independence. And we saw that that was not followed through very well. Many legislators were not happy about the leadership. They felt certain opinions and certain motions moved on the floor were compromised, and there could have been much more rigor. And of course, there's the politics of opposition parties also that comes into play. But my concern at this point really is more of doing an impact assessment and saying, okay, how well have we done? First, from the point of view of even institutional capacity, did that assembly have the requisite capacity in terms of the quality of its personnel? In many parliaments across the world, you see the presence of legal people, lawyers who are congressmen, who are parliamentarians. In Nigeria, it's not so much the case. How, as an institution, and how have the political parties brought in their best foot, put their best foot forward in representation at the National Assembly? And I think those are the deeper issues that we need to look at. As to whether it's rubber stamp or not, of course, those are perception issues. You need to validate that with proper facts and figures. But I think much more can be done in terms of oversight. Much more can be done in not just lawmaking, but repealing of laws, particularly laws that are no longer relevant or need to be modified. Another issue that needs to be looked at is assent that was given to bills that were passed by National Assembly. We can see that there's a whole carryover of quite a number of bills that were not assented to by the president before he left. So these are the areas that I think require improvement. Finally, we've seen over the years to the high rate of turnover between one assembly and the other when it comes to this transition. And sometimes we've lost as much as 70% of our senators. So institutional memory is a big issue. Unlike the executive branch, the National Assembly should retain as many members as possible to provide for institutional memory and continuity. If you're bringing in 60% of your own members as new, you can imagine what the challenge is in terms of getting to understand how the assembly functions, getting to get a grasp of it, especially when many of them have not been involved in this branch of governance before. So it's a very, very big challenge. And I think these are things we need to work on. Our democracy is 24 years old, but there's still many major areas of improvement that we can work on, especially in the assembly, the National Assembly.
Yeah, well, you talk about, them putting their best foot forward. Is it also a good time to also have a review of the quality of persons that we're talking about here filling the National Assembly? Because a lot of times it's not necessarily the very best quality individuals that have the proper interests of the citizens at heart. It's a lot of times it's really just about their own personal interests. You see a lot of former governors, making up National Assembly in the Senate, mostly. And these aren't people that necessarily played the best parts as governors while they were in office. And so this might be a good time to also question, if you're talking about putting their best foot forward, the quality of persons that we're talking about filling these seats in the National Assembly. I want to, you may speak on that, and then also talk about the battle for Senate leadership, and of course the Speaker of the House of Representatives. We've seen, of course, different names being thrown here and there. We also remember the controversy from the 8th Assembly, I think, with Bukola Saraki, and how that has continued to play out, even till date. So quickly share your thoughts on these two issues.
Yeah, institutional capacity is a big issue, and this goes back to even how the political parties operate. I mean, when you're selecting or electing your candidates at the primaries, when you're thinking about who should go and represent you, who really fits. I mean, when I say fits for purpose now, because the executive branch has the peculiarities and has the kind of people you can pass on to that branch. The legislative branch also has its own peculiarities in terms of skills and the knowledge that those kind of people should have to bring, to bear on the assembly and even add value. And of course, I'm not saying that everybody in the National Assembly must be a lawyer, but there must be a minimum level of legal training. There must also be a level of public service experience, because you cannot provide oversight or give oversight when you yourself don't have the experience of how governance also runs. So you need people who have also had strong interface in governance, either participating or have been very close to governance and have served as a check. They've been in civil society, they've been in groups that have continuously checked and monitored what goes on. And I think that is very, very weak. Sometimes people are given these roles and it's patronage because somebody has worked hard for the party. They feel, okay, go for the Senate, and without objectively looking at whether the person has the capacity. So while the person is a committed party member, does he really fit for the role of being a legislator, whether it's in the red chambers or the green chambers or in the state house of assembly? And I think these are things we need to look at. There has been this perception about the natural transition between being a governor and his next steps. And people are saying, this also should stop, because it looked like a lot of governors, see the Senate as the next place to be. And it's almost a sense of entitlement. That also is something that we need to discourage.
Can we quickly ask, can I chip in? I mean, now that you've mentioned that, why do we see that has automatically become like a retirement plan for many governors? It just seems that when they're done with their time in office, they want to get into the Senate. And is there any end to that anytime soon?
Well, some people just say they want to, people do that because they want to remain relevant politically, and therefore National Assembly is the place to go. They're moving from the subnational governments to the federal government, and that gives them political visibility, and who knows what will happen after that. Others say, well, because the governors have control of the party structures in the states, they can determine who goes where after their tenure. So they use that opportunity and also place themselves in those positions, and therefore they're able to take advantage of that process and put themselves there. But it is not a resting place. It is a place that requires a lot of rigor, a lot of vigor, a lot of attention, a lot of presence, a lot of attendance, so that laws are followed through, laws are made, and they are present. It's not a resting home. It's not an old people's home. It's a place where people should put in their very best. Another reason why that seems to happen in this part of the world also seems to be the kind of immunity you derive from being in a member of the National Assembly. So some people also, there's this very strong notion that a lot of governors and other government functionaries go into the National Assembly so that they're insulated from prosecution or insulated from convictions or potential legal issues they may have. So those reasons are usually very dubious, as far as I'm concerned. I think anybody who strives to go to the National Assembly, who wants to go to the National Assembly, irrespective of whether you've been been a governor or not, should have the capacity should have the commitment to do it. It's not a resting place, a place where a very serious role you need to play. And a very strong component of our democracy. Right. And so I think we need to check that erroneous notion that it's a resting place and a natural successive location after you finish governance at the state level.
Well, unfortunately, our electoral system hasn't gotten to that stage where, people can actually reject these governors, who want to move from government house to Senate. But we'll get there. Quickly talk about the controversy concerning the leadership. We're hearing different names being mentioned. And of course, the former governor of Abia State, Orji Uzor Kalu, was in tears a few days ago, weeping profusely. That's me exaggerating. But of course, these are all, in the lead up to Senate leadership. Ahmad Lawan, of course, just left, as a Senate president for the 9th Assembly. He is, of course, still in the Senate, I believe. So how do you see these things playing out? And is it only natural that there would be these, bits of controversy just before the Senate is inaugurated?
Well, that's the beauty of democracy. Democracy itself is a leveler. It levels you. I mean, the Senate president all of a sudden becomes a floor member. And then those who are floor members, some don't even get to come back. So you're allowed to cry, weep, shout, depending on how your emotions take you. But that's not the issue. The issue is how can we retain the best in the Senate? The controversy around leadership, I won't call it controversy. It's part of the negotiation that goes on between one assembly and the other. Of course, there's the power game here. There's the national question. There's the rebalancing also of the levels of power. Okay, and people are saying, well, there's the geopolitics of it too. That okay, fine. The executive got these slots from a certain zone, so the legislative should represent something different. So these are normal, and there's a lot of horse trading going on, there's negotiation going on. But at the end of the day, the votes will count, and out of the 109 members, whoever comes out with the majority that becomes the Senate president. But we must be sensitive to the socio-cultural peculiarities of our people. We must be sensitive to the political balance also, so that at the end of the day, we come out with the right results. Because if the Senate or the National Assembly elects a new leadership that is not acceptable either to its members or to Nigeria, that in itself has its own problems and contradictions.
Is it important to also throw in the religious aspects of it? The Muslim president, Muslim vice president, and then, possibility of a Muslim Senate president. Are those things important in this time, or do we keep saying that we're looking for quality leadership?
Nigeria needs competence, okay? And for me, when people talk about rotation, I talk about rotational competence. It's not about being Christian or Muslim. I'm not aware, and to the best of my knowledge, that any of our leaders was seconded from the JNI or from CAN. I'm not aware of that. People come in there as politicians, people come in there as Nigerians, and we need competent people. And while we may be sensitive to the religious issues, nobody went there and said, well, because of a Christian president, Christians are guaranteed heaven, or Christians will get a better life than other non-Christians in government. So we were using sentiments, and many of us wear different hats. So it is not just fair to use one hat to make a blanket statement. What Nigeria needs are competent leaders who have capacity. For all I care, you can be an atheist. You're God's creation. So, but if you can deliver, please go ahead and do it.
Well, permit me to interject at this point. Permit me to interject, because it can be debatable by a number of people, especially because very recently we saw the video that went viral of the former Kaduna State governor and some of the careless remarks that were being made as regards possibly Islamizing Nigeria. So some people might find those kind of conversations touchy, especially as seeing that a leader had come out to say something in that regard. But I mean, I don't know if you want maybe to react to that video.
No, I mean, people must be sensitive. Leaders must be sensitive to people's religious beliefs. I mean, so whatever we say and whatever we do, we have to be sensitive to it, because religion has the capacity to create a whole lot of problems, or the misunderstanding of it. I've always argued that the problem in Nigeria is not religion, it's our understanding and application of religion. So it doesn't matter whether you're Muslim or Christian, if you really follow it the way it should be, all these conflicts will not arise. So if people are making statements on religion, and exaggerating and talking other people down, it's most unfortunate. Leaders should be, religious neutral. They can take political bias, but in a country like Nigeria, which is very sensitive to religion, I mean, leaders must watch their statements. I mean, that's what I have to say. It is not fair that a leader will come out, castigate, abuse, or condemn another religion. It is especially if you're a political leader. If you're in your church and you can, your mosque, say what you want to say. But when it comes to politics, your audience are both Christians, Muslims, animists, Buddhists, and or what have you. So I think our leaders have to be sensitive to that kind of speech. And I do hope that at some point to this National Assembly will look at areas like that where political leaders have abused the privilege of such public speaking to make those kind of pronouncements. It's most unfortunate.
All right.
Yeah.
I'd like you to talk about how well we're faring as regards separation of powers and the checks and balances that we ought to have in our institutions, in the House of Rep, in the Senate, in the the legislature, executive, and the judiciary. And I'm asking this because I want to believe that you've seen the video of the senator representing Bauchi North Senatorial District, Adamu Mohamed Balkachua, where he had alleged in the video, he had said something in the line of being influencing his wife's judgment, who was a retired judge of the appeal court. I'm going to quote him. She's a retired justice of the appeal court, Zainab Balkachua. He said, and I quote, particularly my wife, whose freedom and independence are encroached upon when she was in office, and she has been very tolerant and accepted my encroachment and extended her help to my colleagues. He said in the video, of course, before he was interrupted by Senator Ahmed Lawan. Now, this video has sparked a plethora of reactions. Number of people asking that the cases that she's looked into in the past 5 years be brought back and reviewed. How would you say that, I want you to react to that video and then give us a sense of how you would say that we're faring in terms of independence of these separate arms and, the checks and balances that should be there.
Yeah, well, very interesting too. Our democracy is evolving, and it's also. I don't think that should have been a public statement, especially made on that platform. But if you remember, there was a national president, I think in the U.S. I'm not sure whether it was Ronald Reagan or George Bush, whose wife was accused of influencing government decisions and government policy. And he said, well, if she shares my bedroom every night, she must have a sphere of influence over what we do because we discuss issues. So, but that is personal, that is private, that has nothing to do with governance. But do spouses have influences on their partners? Yeah, maybe yes, but I don't think it's something that should be public. I don't think it's right. And I think a conversation between two people should not affect the nation or affect judgments or affect justice. You can share views, but I think it's extreme to try to influence. I think the judiciary, by nature of its own, how it operates, is independent. And whether it's your husband at home or your partner somewhere else or your business friend, I don't think it amounts to a conflict of interest if influence is made to bear on this kind of judicial or public policy matters. Having said that, like I mentioned earlier, the capacity to provide oversight is dependent on even the quality and competence of the people. How do they serve as a check? Who's policing the police? Because if you're not doing your job well or you don't have the capacity to do your job well, then how do we measure your efficacy? And at this point, what I expect is that the 9th Assembly would do, 10th Assembly would do an impact assessment. I didn't see any handover notes. Maybe that was done privately, but I'm just simply saying if that has not been done, it should be done so that the new leadership also understands what the old leadership went to, particularly now that the attrition rate, the turnover rate is so high. About 60% of senators are not coming back. So we're starting all over again. That means they have to learn. That means that will take time. The executive branch also will make several changes, to their management. So who really keeps institutional memory? Okay, who really checks that indeed there was efficacy? And it's not just about passing bills. There are bills that also need to be repealed. There are bills that still require presidential assent. So if you take the entire chain, the entire process from originating bills to delivering the bills and to implementing, it's a big issue. I happen to be in the education sector, and for many years there was a law that was passed for a secondary school education commission. Up to today, that institution has not gotten off the ground. Just yesterday, Mr. President approved the setting up a national education bank. That is an idea that's been there for a very long time, and a National Assembly should make sure that beyond passing the bills and passing them through for assent, they should follow through to see that those actually complied with.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of and the institution must build its capacity. National Assembly must build its capacity in delivering good quality governance for the people.
Absolutely. And of course, the executive, different branches of government need to play their own role. Michael Magaji, thank you so much for your time this morning. We did enjoy the conversation with you. Looking forward to speaking with you again post-inauguration. And, let's see who the new Senate President will be, and then we'll have your assessment on that at a later date. Thanks for stopping by.
Most welcome. Thank you.